I think one thing that's interesting, I think the abortion restrictions tend to get more coverage in the news, but one thing that doesn't get talked about as much is the sort of more rigorous push to control contraceptive access in this country. And a few years before Texas started implementing trap laws that restricted abortion, they basically defunded and tore down the reproductive health infrastructure, closing clinics all over the state, making it much harder for women to get access to family planning. And we've seen other states pass similar pieces of legislation. And I'm just wondering, this is for all of you on the panel, but if you could talk a little bit about what do you think is fueling this sort of what is really a new drive to cut back access to family planning? There was once a time when, regardless of your political affiliation, family planning was sort of a bipartisan issue that most people supported, and there's been a shift around that in the past few years. What is that about?
Well, as many feminist theoreticians have said, it's really a move to control women's reproductive power. It's frightening that no matter what men can do, women can still give birth. And Bella Abzug, there were only two gender-specific jobs. One was wet nurse, and the other was sperm donor. And otherwise, there were no jobs that either gender could use. But I think it's hard to really imagine how intense that fear is. And I think a lot of it has come out recently. Another way to measure it is that gay marriage came out of nowhere and prevailed, which is a good thing, in no time. During the same period of time, abortions were getting more and more restricted. I think that's a measure that no matter how much the culture has contempt for homosexuals, it has even more contempt for women.
It's interesting what I'm also seeing on the other side. At the same time that our reproductive choices are being controlled, women are being penalized when they become mothers. So, I think there's an important piece of parenting with dignity that really bridges a lot of different groups in the reproductive justice movement. And, in California, we just defeated a long-standing, horribly racist welfare queen era rule that would deny women who are on public assistance additional aid for children after their first child on aid. And we just were able to repeal that after 20 years. At the same time, women are not being offered access to quality, affordable childcare that would allow them to participate in the workforce. They're being denied paid leave, so they can't even bond with children. So I feel like it's coercive from both sides. And that's why I really feel taking a comprehensive approach to economic security and reproductive justice is so critical. We cannot operate in silos. It's not like we can choose whether or not we'd like reproductive care or paid leave or we need all of these things simultaneously. And I feel like taking this comprehensive approach to economic justice and reproductive justice is really critical. And it's happening. It's happening in the movement. I have here today my women card from California. We're playing it. And on the back are all of our bills that we're just trying to lead with the vision of what we need, no longer what we think we can get. Because I don't really have time. I don't really have time to wait for fair pay. I don't have time to have reproductive choices. I don't have time to wait for paid leave. We actually need it all right now. And I just want to remind ourselves that we have power. We have incredible power. We have movements in this country that are being led by women of color, by immigrant, by low-wage workers. My last case before the Supreme Court was on behalf of the women of Walmart. And we lost that case. The class was decertified. But after that decision, there was an entire movement of women workers that continued the work. And now jobs are posted. And now it's one of the first retail giants to have $10 an hour. We're not done. But it's about a movement that really connects us and doesn't silo us into different issues.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's about the power of organizing on both sides. So I think that there was always a sector of the conservative movement that was unwilling to accept feminist advances, the sexual revolution, Supreme Court decisions legalizing birth control and then abortion. And I think that those folks have always been around. It's not a new movement that has emerged recently. And they quietly organized behind the scenes and worked for a long time until they were in a position to get some political traction. And I think it's not something that has just come about in the last decade, but I think their power has really been ascendant over the last decade. And so I think it means it's incumbent on us, on those of us who identify as feminists, on those of us that want to see gender equality and reproductive justice, to be organized as well, and to keep working and to not be complacent and take things for granted. I think that's in some ways why the more conservative groups were able to finally gain traction, because I think we may have taken a step back and put our attention on other things that are equally as important. But I think without constant vigilance and in defense of our rights, there are always going to be groups looking to take those rights away and move us backwards. And I think the folks in this movement, they have a very specific view of what family ought to look like. It's a very narrow view, and I think that that they think that anyone whose family looks different from their ideal of what family ought to be is somehow doing something wrong. And it's not just about abortion, and it's not just about contraception, it's not just about equal pay, as the other speaker so eloquently said. It's about all of these things together. They are all at risk, and if we think that these things are important, if we think that every person, every woman and man should have the right to decide what their family should look like and what kind of family they want to form, then we need to keep fighting to protect those rights.
May I say one thing? The other thing that we neglected was, while we were going after the big wins, they were organizing on the grassroots level. They were getting elected to library boards, school boards, state assemblies. They worked from the bottom up, which is one of the most important principles of political organizing. And I think that we missed the boat there. We didn't see it coming, and we didn't do our share of organizing at that level.